Everybody, welcome to Salt. We are broadcasting live from beautiful downtown Keene, Texas, where it's still hot as we wonder why we're in October and the temperatures are still in the 90s. But we're not complaining because we have a house and
Air conditioning. Yes.
And we should be thankful for all the good things we have in life.
And we are thankful for all the good things we have.
We're so thankful for the hot weather. Thank you so much. So here we are. Now, as we were talking about today, like I remember living in other places. In October, I would expect already, wind and leaves and cold and sweaters and and here we're still sweltering in the 90-degree heat.
October is usually in Keene about 80.
Yeah.
80 something. It's a time when it's cooled down enough that you start going to the botanical gardens again, and the roses bloom again, and I don't know that that's happening.
No.
We haven't been obviously because it's still 90 degrees and yeah.
Texas is different. I'm used to North Carolina, like North Carolina when I was at Pisgah and stuff, and it'd be cold and fall and the colors and everything. And I think Nebraska even, it would have been, chillier there and we'd have been, but not here. I don't know if this is normal for Texas or not, global warming, or if this is just Texas. We haven't lived here long enough, I guess, to really know the Texas weather patterns. But
so far, it's usually been in the 80s in October. Yeah. Much like Texas. I mean, what am I saying, Texas? Vegas, when we lived in Vegas.
Yeah, Vegas, which is a desert. But anyway,
we're borderline desert.
We are borderline desert, and not to bore you with interesting facts that have no meaningful application to anything, but one of the biggest deserts in the world, South Pole, the Antarctic, is actually a desert. You don't think of it that way, but it is one of the driest places on Earth. Anyway, so welcome to Salt, where we're not doing the weather report. We're talking about, I don't know, because Miranda plans these things, and I just sit here and talk.
Oh, Brett knows. He's read it twice now. The pre-version and the post-version.
And the post-version.
And which will probably both be different than the actual version.
It was interesting today in Sabbath school. Former student of mine caught us after Sabbath school. So I thought it was cool. He came just to talk to us. And he's in film school up in Dallas. And we were talking about, at one point, just kind of kicking around, plans the future and how, you make it in the film world and stuff. And there's I tell all my students that a degree is important. A degree is good. If you don't have a job, you don't have anything going on, get a degree. But in the film world, much as in the acting world, it's more about what you can do and who you know. If you have a degree, that's great. It's sort of an added benefit, but really it's, can you make good film? Can you, produce good stuff? And who gets to see that? People you actually get to connect with and know. That can have a lot more influence on your future than an actual degree. So in that particular world, who you know is kind of important, which sort of goes along with what we're going to be talking about today. And the other thing that struck me was in Sabbath school we were talking about, at one point we were talking about not judging people until you've, at least listened to their life experience. If it's something you don't have any relation to or can't relate to, instead of judging something from a distance, being able to at least get some sort of personal connection with people, not that judging's good, but, understand that our limited life human experience doesn't grant us, the wisdom to make, calculating decisions across a wide range of topics. The longer you live, the more you learn, the less you know about life. And I thought that was interesting today with, again, another thing we're talking about in pastoring in churches. When I first started pastoring in churches, I was extremely naive. My first time out, I went to California, and I thought my first church, this is going to be an amazing world to work in because it's pastoring a church, and there's like 5-6 churches in the Sacramento area, and it's got to be everyone loves each other and works together in harmony because this is pastoral ministry, right? We're all pastors. We're all leading churches. We all, and reality couldn't be more opposite of what I experienced, in that you couldn't hardly get churches to work together, and just the pettiness sometimes you'd find in places. And as we went on and I worked in other churches, I guess some of the stuff that would frustrate me or dishearten me is times when you'd have a situation where you had to talk about a person or some conflict or anything, and it was, how do we deal with this person? How do we they're disrupting this or that, how do we deal with it? Or debates came up of, should we let this person be in the praise group? Should we let this person up front and do things? Should we allow this person? And the debates and discussions that would go on over this, and I know I'm more liberal than I should be, I guess. I always came to this default of, well, my goodness, we're a church. Let's, whenever we're in question or in doubt, let's go fall back onto the love, joy, peace, and long-suffering. Let's try those. Let's let those be our decision makers and how we treat people. And I only brought those two things up because it's sort of going along with what we're talking about today, about relationship and the fruits of the Spirit, and how we deal with people in the fruits of the Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
There's your intro.
Very good. Okay, so I actually thought about the parable of the 10 virgins for just a bit this last week, and which reminds me of what I really did this last week was, I think we mentioned that I was taking a class over at the university, and it's not at all what I thought it was going to be. I was going to be the 27 fundamental beliefs. It is not. It's all about philosophies and philosophers and so on and thus and such and words I never heard of before and that sort of thing. So preparing for the midterm was like days worth of going over the notes and trying to find the answers the teacher said we needed and things like that. So that was actually what I really did this last week. But over here on the other hand, I did take a look at like I said, the parable of the 10 virgins who were waiting on the bridegroom, of course, that Jesus told this story. And, they were waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting, and he's just not showing up. And so eventually they fall asleep, and then all of a sudden, he's coming. So they all jump up and they're going to go, except now 5 of the virgins don't have any oil to light their lamps with, but the other 5 do. So those 5 that have oil, they go into the
wedding feast.
The wedding feast, yes, with the bridegroom. But the 5 that didn't, they had to go out and try to find some oil and stuff like that. And finally, when they arrive, the door is locked, and when they knock, the bridegroom says, "I'm sorry, but I never knew you." And basically, he's telling them that, we never had a personal relationship. I don't know who, we didn't communicate like you would need to be communicating with a personal relationship.
In the parable, the 5 virgins had extra oil, and the 5 didn't. They ran out, and they had tried to go out and find more, and nobody had any.
Right, and those without asked those with for some of the oil, but the oil represents the Holy Spirit, and we personally just can't give the Holy Spirit. We can pray for the Holy Spirit for ourselves and others and such, but the Holy Spirit, as Jesus said, just kind of blows like a wind and goes where it wishes. But clearly it is very important, because it was only those with the Holy Spirit that went into the wedding feast, and that was just something that personally I noticed as I was going through that this last week. And so when we're talking about the Holy Spirit, obviously the next step to that would be having the fruits of the Spirit.
Yeah, and it was again with the parable of virgins. They knew the bridegroom, and that was one of them. Who it's the relationship, and a lot of the stuff that we've talked about in Sabbath school in the last few weeks and everything. In fact, one of the things I like about when Miranda prepares for Sabbath school, it's not. Sometimes you get in there and it's easy to talk about the theology and everything, but Miranda's always looking for the relationship part of the lesson. How does this really apply to everyday life? Or, a real relational connection with God, with Jesus, and which is what part of the parable of virgins is that he told them, is like, I don't know who you are, meaning I never knew you, which also goes along with we were talking about last week. It wasn't last week. It was some week we were talking about, the people came and said, I did all this stuff in your name. And Jesus says, well, I never knew you. Depart, and it's
yeah.
the motivation of...
That's been quite a while since we talked about that, but we did talk about it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it was the motivation of, yeah, they did those things, but why did they do those things? Versus people who had a relationship with God came from a place of love, joy, peace, long suffering, and others did it as, a way to check off boxes, which shows the difference between the fruits of the Spirit and living without the fruits of the Spirit, living with a relationship with Jesus and living without a relationship with Jesus.
Yeah.
You can do some of the same things and yet have very different results.
Living with that relationship with Jesus, you get to the point where, you're not a very good person.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just every day you're going to fall for something, it seems like. Where it's like, oh, again? And yet, you go back to Jesus and it's just like, you know what? I can't live without you. I cannot live without you. I'm here to keep on going. And that's what our relationship is about. It's like, I cannot live without Jesus. And then everything that I'm going to do, or would want to do anyways, is going to be based on that. How I need him, and that you want to be in his presence, and just living out the best life that he has for you.
And then that took us to the fruits of the Spirit.
Right. Yeah. Because God and Jesus, they have desires for us as well, and that's the very best. They want the very best for us. And should we not then, in our desire for him, want that very best that he has for us? A little off topic here, but basically, okay, so in Matthew 13, Jesus talks about the sower, which was him, of course, who sows the seed of his words into people's lives. And some people just aren't interested, or other people are busy, or, with the worries of life and such. But others hear the words and understand it, and it bears fruit, the fruits of the Spirit, right? So Galatians 5:22 and 23. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And then it says, against such thing there is no law. Now, I know you gave that some thought.
Yeah, well, I like the wording, and I remember studying this before, and I couldn't remember the wording, against there is no law. So I had to go look it up again, and it really meant there's no condemnation. And it means if you live like this, you can't be condemned because you're fulfilling the law without, you don't need the law because that is the law. And it went back to, that's why I use that, the illustration or the story about, as a pastor, whenever you're confronted with a situation, and not just as a pastor, you're confronted with a situation of how to deal with something, you don't know how to deal with something, always fall back on love, joy, peace, long-suffering, the fruits of the Spirit. Treat someone in that way, and you really can't go wrong if you choose love in every situation. If you choose peace, long-suffering, patience, whatever, that's what that's saying. Then you can't be condemned. Then that's the right choice. If you're not sure what to do, choose this. That will take you down the right path.
Yeah, and so basically, how I thought of it was, because fairly recently we talked about how, the Ten Commandments and how it represents the character of God and such, and which is love. And then how it's bigger than just thou shalt not steal or thou shalt not kill and stuff, because Jesus said for at least a couple of them that thou shalt not kill, but I say don't hate your brother. And the whole don't commit adultery is also, well, don't even look at her and think about things like that. And so it goes bigger and deeper the longer that we're in that relationship, and it's the Holy Spirit then who will continue to show us the depths of it. Instead of thou shalt not steal, it becomes more than that. And I'm going to suggest that the things like peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control, would they not be a part of the things like thou shalt not steal, or lie, or covet your neighbor's house, wife, or donkey, or probably car these days, it's just a deeper look at those things.
And it's just meaningful and personal because in a lot of situations in our lives in the last, I don't know, 20 years or so, especially there's been some stuff happening just, with the university and my job and stuff, and people like, some of them people like, man, you're more patient than I could ever be, or oh my goodness, you're just, how are you dealing with this, and part of it goes back to this. It's just like, well, you can stir and steam and stew over it, and you can be angry and resentful, or you just, like, well, God's in control of everything, and these are people, and I'm going to choose to be patient, forgiving, long-suffering, and go, God's in control of everything, and I'm going to choose to be peaceful and loving instead of getting all worked up and resenting and pitching. It doesn't do any good, and it's actually worse for you. Like when you have situations in life where you hold on to anger or resentment, it hurts you more than it does whoever you're angry or resentful against. And again, that's another way that the fruits of the Spirit are more about you living your best life and you being in a good place and your relationship with God than it has to do with others.
Yeah, because that's really when you begin to really experience that power of God and of His Spirit in your life, because you start choosing to live like that. He does come along and change your heart for you.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that was, when I was reading the stuff there, it's like, that's what it made me think of. It's like, that's just good advice for everyday living, and the fruits of the Spirit is to choose those things. And inadvertently, like you were saying, it's interesting because then it's really a deeper look at the Ten Commandments, because all those things are wrapped up in the fruits of the Spirit, or products of the fruits of the Spirit. And it's just, when in doubt, choose a fruit of the Spirit.
Yummy. Pears, peaches, too bad, I think we had the last of the fresh peaches last week. Yeah, didn't see any in the store next time we went in. It was very sad.
Yep. Anyway, so there you go. Was that it?
That was it.
Oh,
we had more, but I was trying to streamline the whole thing a little bit, and we'll maybe touch on some of the other things another time.
Another time.
Yes.
Yeah, I just to make sure you got that last one I thought was really good was the fruits of the Spirit in the love, joy, strength. And then it says, against this there is no law, there's no condemnation. It's actually a deeper, really an opening, broader, deeper application of the Ten Commandments, of the law. It doesn't do away with the law. It's actually the real everyday, results of living the law. It all kind of circles together.
Right, and that's what the fruit is. Jesus sows His words of truth into our lives, and will we spend time with those? And so they grow and such like that, or just too busy with life, not really interested, and so then they get choked out by weeds or eaten up by the birds or some such thing.
So there you go. So maybe next week we'll have Miranda tell you all about the definition of Plato and Socrates and how they viewed the immutability of God and His character and personality in pantheism, and how it... This is what she's studying.
No idea. But
yes,
it is an interesting way to jump back into school.
Yes.
Yes. Brett had originally, a couple years ago, signed me up for the Life and Teachings of Jesus, which Aspen, when she took it herself, said, and I ended up not taking it because it was online, and I don't do well with online classes, but when Aspen took it, she's like, "Oh, Mom, I think that would have been too easy for you anyways." But now,
That's a freshman level course. Now she's jumped into a 400 senior level course.
Yeah, and I'm paying for it. Definitely paying for that one. But I do find it interesting, though it's not something I would have picked.
Yes. And there's one person in our house getting ready for midterms, because I don't give midterms, so I don't have to prepare for them. So I'm not a proponent of... I'm not a big tester. and so I don't. My students are. It's actually fun to see their release and their joy when I say, no, we're not having a midterm, because I don't believe in that. I don't think they're all that useful, and so I'm like, oh, so it gives them a chance to study for other midterms. So I don't have to prepare for midterms. I'm sorry. So anyway, so well.